College football is here. I got a few notes on week 0. I got another top 10 list for you. I've got your watches for Thursday and Friday here of the week 1 slate. And I've got some notes on Longlegs and the Deadpool movies that have both come out in the past couple of weeks. Stay tuned afterwards. I did put some spoiler Deadpool thoughts on the end. Let's go.
All my blessings, 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 all my blessings.
I need my blessings every penny, daily counting every single one, I'm seeing plenty. Level up and watch that beat turn into a Bentley. See I'm stunned.
All right, welcome in. So I finally got my eyes on a couple of the big films in theaters right now. First of all, Deadpool and Wolverine was a banger. I was able to stay away from all the spoilers. I didn't watch any of the new trailers besides the initial one that came out months ago. I stayed away from all the major plot points and like any relevant information up until a few days before, when I unfortunately came across a couple of spoilers of guests and the villain reveal and all that. So I wasn't super thrilled about that piece, but overall, there were still surprises for me in the film, and I enjoyed it very much. Deadpool is one of my favorite characters. Growing up, I pulled the first issue of his, his own comic line from the 3 for $1 comic box out in the local comic store that we went to, me and my brothers when we were younger, and spent our weekly allowance at, or I think we actually got allowance every 2 weeks for a while when we were younger, just what our parents could afford for us. And yeah, comics 3 for $1. Pulled several of the 90s Deadpool issues out of the boxes there, and that was early years in the 90s when he first got his own run there, the golden age of comics when everyone had their own spin-off. Gambit, Wolverine, he had his series going on years previous, of course, but Cable, Bishop, a lot of the X-characters had their own books during that period, besides all the spin-off teams, the X-Force, the Excalibur, New Mutants, and again, some of those came before the 90s, but some of those came out of the 90s as well. So I'm very familiar with the Merc with a Mouth. The first 2 movies were enjoyable. It does seem like we got a little shortchanged with the guest spots to some extent, of course, with the limited X-Men cast in I believe it was the first movie. We did, of course, get Cable then in the second one, which was nice, especially because there was a Cable and Deadpool comic book series team up for a while. I believe that title has been canceled, and they're doing something a little different there. The X-Men comic line altogether is going through a whole reboot now, as of July, I believe, of this year, 2024, and they're doing some different things with the lines. This is the first reboot I think that they've had since 2000, if I'm not mistaken, which is ironically when the villain for this film first premiered. I'm not going to give that away, but it was interesting to see a more modern villain in this film as far as the main antagonist here. And yes, 20-something years can indeed make you a more modern villain, because some of them have been around for quite a long time, and decades, and it's not every day that we just get a new villain in the pages of a monthly comic book. So to have someone in here that's since the turn of the century is something that's kind of special. Interesting villain choice, but and a very powerful one that's handled reasonably carefully. And of course, we get an interesting ending that puts a stop to this person. But, it's one of these convoluted comic book storylines anyways that kind of ends how they want it to end, unfortunately. So it doesn't necessarily make sense, but if you've seen it, then you know. But interesting villain choice, especially for who that villain has connections to. And of course, it opens the lines for, this is no spoiler, but the X-Men coming up. In that regard, I thought we'd have a little bit more connective tissue, but there's no end credit scene to really lend a line in that direction. But I guess we'll have more of that coming up. This is more of a, seemed like really more of a almost enclosed story here. The plot line is interesting, I guess. The opening scene is pretty fantastic. Then, of course, we get a rewind to show how we got to this opening action scene, but that's pretty fun. The soundtrack is pretty fun. I still enjoy, if you enjoyed the first two, you enjoy at least Ryan Reynolds in this capacity. I enjoy him altogether, but if you enjoy at least him as the Deadpool character, he does a very good job of that with the wit and the comments. It's very fun. Now, the guests in here are pretty phenomenal. It's no surprise that they were going to bring back some of the Fox properties, some of the Fox characters, folks from older movies, and kind of work on closing at least that line. And they kind of do that here. Obviously, if you've seen the movie, you obviously know that as well. But being able to go back to some of the crummy movies or some of the movies that have been made previously and being able to say that they're different timelines is both good and weird, right? To say that let's say that the original X-Men line of films that ran for, how many films was that? We had the first 3 X-Men's. We had X3 with the Apocalypse. We had the Phoenix one was the last one they did there. Over like 20 years and like 8 X-Men films that ended with Logan was in that run too. But to say that was just a different timeline, which is not exclusively said here, but is implied, it's just very strange now to say that, it's almost like it doesn't count. It does, but it doesn't. So it'll be interesting to see what happens moving further and how the X-Men and mutants are discussed moving forward. Really don't want another origin story, but I just love the X-Men. X-Men and Spider-Man were my stuff growing up. Still read quite a bit of Batman as well, and really collected whatever I could get my hands on, again at 30 cents a comic book. But I would really like to see some really solid X-Men stories. There's a lot of plots, a lot of good characters, and a lot of diversity, and just a lot of moral lessons that can tie to the real world, same as they could 7 years ago when the X-Men first appeared. So excited to see what they do moving forward. Again, a great film. Closes more than it opens for the future. It closes more plot points more than it does open for the future. Fun guest stuff. A few more avenues they perhaps could have taken with a few characters. Yeah, I still have to read up on a few things as well to see if I missed any Easter eggs. But overall, great film. Loved it. I think it was my favorite of the Deadpool movie, my favorite of the Marvel movies I've seen in quite a while. And 4 out of 5 stars for me in the old letterbox. It's hard to get higher than that for me anyway. So 4 to 5 stars for me. The other film that I had the opportunity to see recently was Longlegs. I knew nothing of the film coming in. I didn't even watch the trailer. I just heard it was supposed to be a spooky, creepy film that had a lot of build up. And of course, it's not a film that had a previous iteration. It wasn't tied to a franchise. So I didn't know what it was about up until I was looking up movie times and caught that it was about a serial killer and that Nicolas Cage, of course, was involved. So that was all I knew about the film heading in, other than I had high anticipation for it. It was going to be creepy. Now, if there's one thing I've learned about myself over the years, it's that I love movies, and that if I had to tie myself to one specific kind or genre that I really loved, it's the thriller serial killer movies, often with a cop angle. We're talking Seven, Zodiac, Silence of the Lambs, Kiss the Girls, Taking Lives, Bone Collector, Prisoners, probably one of the more modern ones on that particular kind of list. Even Mr. Brooks, I would say, even though that's a little bit different spin on that kind of thing, but a serial killer kind of thriller, and bonus points if cops are involved, and kind of the main mystery solvers. So this was right up my alley. Now, most of the time, these are very set in reality, and this film, you're not quite sure I don't want to spoil too much on this one either, and it leaves a lot open throughout the film. But man, it's dark, it's dreary. We get some action right off the rip in the opening scene. Our character lead is a very quirky female agent, which we get with, several of these films, obviously. Someone who's a little off or a little different. Not quite sure what to make of the resolution, but throughout a good chunk of the movie, it's just nice and eerie. And man, Nicolas Cage, if you hadn't have said it was him in this role, or you hadn't read up on it, you wouldn't know it was him. And I'm not the biggest Nicolas Cage fan, but man, he is great in this role. The evil, creepy kind of music is great. The little twists are very interesting, and kind of the methods that we use to get to the end point are just very on point. We don't always know exactly where the mystery is going to go. We have some creepy locations. We have some interesting characters involved. We have some digging into the past lives of our main kind of weird protagonist and antagonist. And it's just a very good movie, I think. And I'm excited to watch it again. Again, I don't rewatch a whole lot of films because I'm always interested to see the next thing that's out there. But this is one I'm going to rewatch. And again, the journey to the ending plays out like you would expect for this kind of film. But once we get into the final act, I think it's a little bit different than a cop, serial killer, thriller type of film. And we get some different elements in the mix and leaves things a little open. Sometimes these kind of films do have a resolution, like the case is closed. And sometimes you have, like Seven, we have the Brad Pitt character who's going to be haunted by, of course, what happens in the case. And you have some of those lingering elements afterwards. Zodiac isn't solved, though. Mr. Brooks, you're not sure what happens next. So there's some open-endedness to some of these as well. And this is going to be one of those type of films, just as a heads up. It is billed as a horror movie, though. So I think that the expectation is of more of the horror element, which is it could be natural or supernatural. So I think that's very much something that's implied by the trailer now that I've seen it. So good movie. I've enjoyed it. I think you should go see it if you haven't already. If you have seen it, I think you've been blown away by the Nicolas Cage performance, just like I have. But this is an original film, an original plot. The Longlegs name came out just because it was kind of a creepy name. So it's not tied to anything, which is both kind of too bad, but both also great as well, I think. It's eerie, it's creepy, it's dark, it's got your fun character elements. I think it hits the right notes for this kind of presentation, and I think it slots right in with these type of films. So I very much recommend Longlegs. So I had just a couple more college football points here getting into the season that we cut last time due to brevity, but it just so happens that one of them ties into Georgia Tech's Week 0 win here. 24-21 over Florida State. They're able to kick a walk-off field goal to win this one, and they just beat Florida State up in the trenches here in Ireland. We didn't get a lot of rain, though we got some dark clouds for sure towards the end of this game, where the stadium looked pretty nifty here. We got to see Nick Saban on College Game Day. He warned of that dangerous offense of the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, something I also appreciate very much, and any of us that have been able to glance them going back to last season. Led by Haynes King there, and that great coaching staff there by Coach Key. Haynes King didn't have to throw it a lot. 11 for 16, 146. Was able to Scooby-Doo it, run around a little bit. 15 carries for 54 yards was the attributed amount there. About 190 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. 5.3 a clip, although, when we filter out some of the noise, it comes down a little bit there. But the point was, Florida State was crushed on both sides of the line, and they looked a little worse run blocking, certainly, than they did in pass protection. DJ, 19 for 27 for 193. No turnovers, no picks, didn't really force the ball downfield, under 100 yards rushing the football. I believe just under 100 yards, something like that. And just not productive, really, at all for Florida State. Not very impressive. They did put a big drive together to tie the game up in the fourth quarter, but the time of possession here, which ended up tied up towards the end of the game. Florida State, though, had it one time, one long drive towards the end there, but through the majority of the second half, it very much went Georgia Tech's way, and they did damage. 5 for 9 converting on third downs. They rolled up 336 yards to 291 and just looked very dangerous. No turnovers in this game. Pretty clean. 4 combined penalties in this one as well. And Georgia Tech looked very impressive. And Florida State, we knew they had a lot of pieces there replacing. And these games can, you never know what happens in these games. You are international. Your time's all screwed up. And it's an opening game between two teams that are well coached. And theoretically, Florida State has the better recruits. Of course, we talk about how the transfer portal can bring in instant impact players now. But Georgia Tech now has that continuity. I believe the odds have changed. It's no longer Florida State, then Clemson, then Miami, depending on where you look. Odds-wise to win the ACC, I believe it's Clemson, Miami, Florida State, depending on where you're looking. So it's not good that your opening game, the first game of the college football season at the Division I FBS level. You get my FBSs and FCSs confused, but you know where I'm going. Is a conference game and you drop it to fall to 0-1. Devastating for Florida State. And of course, all the talking heads, they might be out of the playoffs. They still have a chance. They might be out of the ACC race. It's one game. It is a conference game. It matters, particularly when there's a very intense race there for the top. And Miami looks like it's going to be right in the mix there, along with Clemson, who always is. Now, Georgia Tech, are they going to stay in it? It doesn't seem super likely. It would not particularly favor them. As we look at next game here, though, we'll skip ahead to SMU. We only had 4 games on opening weekend, and we're used to seeing a Big Ten matchup, actually, as well in Week 0, and that did not happen. But SMU projected to possibly be in the mix in the ACC here, and they struggled mightily. They moved to 1-0. Preston Stone shattered his leg a couple weeks into last season, and the backup played out the rest of the year. They came into this season thinking they had 2 quarterbacks ready to go, and man, was it a slugfest with a team that they were favored over by 4 touchdowns in the opener in a really dead-ass Nevada squad. They had to come back and rally 16 unanswered points in the fourth quarter to win 29-24. They were down huge in this one and scored a touchdown in the last, was it minute or a couple minutes? But a big strike by Preston Stone here. His only touchdown of the day. He also had an interception, was 17 for 30 for 254. Did not play a great game and really struggled against Nevada, who did an excellent job defending the passing, speedy SMU Mustangs. Really disorientated them, screwed them up here. Stone was able to run a little bit, but just struggled throwing the football. And we expect him to really put up numbers in the ACC as well, where they moved over to from the American, and they could have caught a body too. But Nevada, 2 touchdowns for Brendan Lewis, 18 for 26, 132 yards, and executed pretty well on the ground as well, with over 70 yards rushing. A great kind of spreadish offense there, doing some different things, and a great job preventing SMU from moving the ball a whole lot on their side as well. 8 for 18. It was over 50% at one point for Nevada before things got sticky towards the end there. They had more yardage at one point as well. Ultimately, 408 to 298 was the advantage for SMU. And 22 penalties. And this one was really a cluster. And Nevada just really executed for quite a while until the last drive. by Preston Stone. The other game we had here was New Mexico. Gave up 21 points in the fourth quarter to fall 35-31 to lower level Montana State, 35-31. That was to be expected. New Mexico rebuilding this season. The Lobos really struggling, but two bottom feeders here in the Mountain West Conference, New Mexico and Nevada, nearly pulling off wins in their openers. Would have been a really big deal considering the Mountain West was so competitive last season. To see two teams kind of step up in the opener here, really just the first little ripple in the pond of what could be a real shaken boat here moving forward in the college football season. But still, really interesting to see the fight between New Mexico and Nevada. Now, there were two defensive touchdowns, I believe, here by New Mexico. I certainly watched one of them. I didn't watch the entire chunk of this game. I doubt that anyone listening to this did. But still, very productive. Two fumbles here. Scoop and scores by Montana State. Still impressive, all things considered, by the New Mexico Lobos, considering the low level of performance that was really expected and they could ultimately suffer from this year. So Hawaii did not cover their spread, not even close. 40-point favorites, I believe, something like that. 35-14 was the final over lower level Delaware State, the Hornets, or something with a stinger. And they just won the football game. That was about it. Nothing super impressive about this. Shagner has been the quarterback there for at least a couple 3 years now. And Hawaii, just a team still chugging along out there. 13 games available on the schedule due to travel and all that. Have an opportunity to put an extra game on there that other squads do not. And taking advantage here in week 0, as they usually do, to put a win on the board, even though it's not a big, smashing win that they hoped. Impressive for Jeremiah Otis, who had a pretty big impact defensively, though. A sack, handful of tackles, couple for loss, sophomore, a little undersized there, but was very productive for them on the defensive end. So how does this have connective tissue to what I was talking about with Elliott the other day? Well, Georgia Tech was on another fun list I had thrown together called Channel Flippers, that we hadn't quite been able to discuss. So we talked about our top 10 teams to flip on the television, besides checking out the top ranked teams, top matchups, and all that. I made another list because we all love them, of just channel flippers, teams that might suck depending on the matchup, might be unfun to watch from time to time, but for some reason or another are either building this season, hoping to surprise in their conference, or perhaps build next year, but just teams that have something going for them. So my number one team on the list is Auburn. Hugh Freeze, of course, in year 2 there, bringing in some top receiver talent, top 10 recruiting class overall. The quarterback is not set yet. Peyton Thorne, of course, transferred in from Michigan State last season. It was not used to throw the football, but run it, which was not something he was doing at Michigan State. Looked all right doing it at times. They really gave Georgia a run for their money. They should have beaten Alabama, and when you put those two together, you say, whoa, Alabama and Georgia in the same season, and they were a coin flip bowl-eligible team? That's pretty wild. Well, yes, at some point he'll get a couple of those other key positions locked down, quarterback being the main one. As soon as next year, he could be fighting for a SEC. Yes, in the 18 teams there now, an SEC championship, maybe a top seed there in the playoffs, maybe a title. Yes, a title. As soon as next season, if he gets a quarterback in place there, maybe we're 2 years away. Really, again, quarterback's the key piece there, and you can transfer one of those in at any point, right? But not necessarily a top watch for me. Not going to be ranked, I think, at any point in the year. But if you're flipping around, looking for something to check on, Auburn is going to be probably the top team for me on the list. Arizona's number 2. Not quite sure what they're going to look like this season, but Noah Fifta did not follow his coach to Washington, and neither did Teteriola McMillan, who is something like 1,200 yards away, 1,300 yards away, close to becoming the all-time receiving leader in Arizona football history. They can certainly get that this season. Not sure if they're going to explode and hit like 9-10 wins. The defense is a little questionable. Again, some players did leave, some didn't. Switching some pieces around. Head coach was a former wide receiver. He did pretty well at San Jose State, all things considered. Not that the wins are necessarily there, but for a school that really should be winning like 2 games a year, even in the Mountain West, he did pretty well. And maybe he can coach up. I mean, this is his spot. He's got a nice quarterback wide receiver combo in the country, and wide receiver was his spot, so perhaps he can get something, really squeeze all the juice out of these guys that he can get. Georgia Tech was number 3 for me. Offense is interesting. Top 35 last year. Of course, we have Haynes King back. And what do you know? Nick Saban thought the same on College Game Day, and they went out there and tossed Florida State. Very interesting. Now, this was a standalone game, of course, and the opening game and against a ranked opponent and all that. So if you knew college football was kicking off last Saturday with week 0 and not the big slate heading into Labor Day here, starting actually on Thursday, we'll touch on a few of those games in a moment, then you were tuned into this one regardless. But of course, now they're on everyone's radar as a team to just say, oh, well, in between, the Red River rivalry, this big game, Oklahoma, Texas, and in between Alabama, Georgia. Well, let's just flip over for a couple minutes and get an eye on Georgia, or Georgia Tech, excuse me. If they're getting beat by 20 points, then maybe we don't go back to that game. But if they're in the mix, well, maybe we watch them for a few more minutes and put them back on the radar for the next couple hours, So Georgia Tech there. Number 4, Michigan State. Now this team could be an absolute disaster this year. I believe the over-under games was sitting pretty firmly at 4.5 for quite a while. There's a lot of excitement for the quarterback right here, right? Aiden Chills, I always call him Chilies. Chilies, AC. He's going to have nicknames for sure if he is productive. Jonathan Smith, fun quarterback name, followed by the most boring coach name you could ever have, John Smith. But quarterback AC comes with a whole lot of hype. True sophomore. Didn't redshirt last year, played in more games than he didn't as the backup quarterback for Oregon State. Not that the guy he sat behind was super productive anyways. He's probably one of the weaker parts of the team, quite frankly. But a lot is expected of him. Was a 4-star quarterback that Smith was able to lure in there and then bring across the country. Solid. And I hope that, we don't get, we may have youth bumps and all that, which is fine. We'll have transfer portal issues. We'll have young guys, young recruits playing. We'll have all the things that come with a coaching change and a clean out and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of promise here and a lot of expectation for AC that he may even be the top quarterback in the conference by the end of the season. I think that's a little high, but if that's even the hype, again, flip over. Let's watch some Michigan State games. Number 5 is Liberty. They're expected to win every single game they play, quite frankly. Horrible schedule, literally the worst ranked schedule in the country as far as difficulty. Colton Salter is a really fun quarterback. They had they had the number 1 rushing offense last season. Quentin Cooley had 1,600 yards and 16 touchdowns last year. He was a transfer from Wake Forest. They're going to put up points. They're going to run a lot. They're going to do some fun option stuff, and they're going to beat the shit out of everyone they play. Number 6, South Florida. Byram Brown last year started to look pretty good, started to do some stuff. 3,200 passing yards, 800 rushing yards. They held Alabama to 17 points last season, despite having the 115th ranked defense, so maybe some weirdness going on there. They do play Alabama and Miami again this season, so there's an opportunity for you to catch them twice, if only because you're trying to watch those two squads. They had the 17th ranked offense last season somehow, so figure that. But a dual threat quarterback in South Florida there, and again, Florida State, Miami, everything. And Central Florida we'll get to in a second here. All the Florida squad should have something interesting going on. And don't forget Florida International, now sponsored by Pitbull. So all fun stuff all the way around here. Number 7, of course, I had the Nebraska Cornhuskers, a team that's been talked about ad nauseum for years and years and years and has not produced a whole lot. 5-star quarterback Dylan Raiola has been locked into the top spot forever. Top 20 recruiting class in here. Defense was top 20 last season. It's just lined up. Let's go win some games, Nebraska. Number 8 is Memphis. Offensively, loaded. Seth Hannigan has been starting quarterback there for quite a while. Wide receiver Rock Taylor is an NFL caliber receiver. And this team can load up points on the American Conference, which is going to be a little bit down this year. And Memphis is expected to do some damage in there. It could be a sneaky playoff team. That could certainly happen. Liberty in the mix there. Boise State as well from the Mountain West if they were to win it. But the defense is going to struggle a bit. But Memphis in the mix there. Central Florida I have at the 9 spot. Transfer quarterback KJ Jefferson from Arkansas could lead the last year's top 10 offense and top 5 rushing offense to those categories again. He can run it. He can throw it. He leads Arkansas in all school records, completion percentage, I think yardage, all kinds of stuff. And he's going to use his feet a little bit more here. UCF had some multiple quarterbacks start for them last couple years due to injury and various other things going on. So he'll have an option to steer right into a number of different fun offensive principles here that UCF does. A nice fit for a Power 4 quarterback moving into, well, I guess Central Florida's in the Big 12 now. No, one of the conferences. It'll be exciting. Central Florida here at the 9 spot. Number 10, I have Stanford. No one's going to watch Stanford. That's fine. They won 3 games last year. I like the quarterback, Ashton Daniels. He's been hurt, banged up past couple years. The wide receivers are interesting. Eric Manor is promising. So he may have like a good offensive line this year and a good core. And if he can stay on the field and not miss multiple games like he has the past 2 seasons, like the offense could be really good. Like really, really good. And they could do some damage now that they're part of the Atlantic Coastal Conference, because Lord knows there's wins to be had over there. So Stanford. And a couple honorable mentions. I mean, UTSA quarterback should be all right. They have McGowan over there. Luke McGowan, I believe, son of the former NFL career backup. Had some solid transfers from Power 4 schools. Kamir Missouri, Rutgers offensive lineman. A wide receiver, J.J. Sparkman from Texas Tech. So a couple other pieces as well from across the country. And Frank Harris, of course, quarterback there for a long time. And a couple of the great receivers. Gone now, but they just reloaded and have some good transfers to really a lower level conference team. So they should be bubbling up to the top of that and could be fun offensively again. Arizona State, they're well coached and they're still building. Kenny Dillingham is in there. I think he's 40 now. Just a young guy. 3-9 last season was actually a high mark for them. Sam Levitt's going to be the quarterback from MSU. Transferred over there. Not good. That we know of. He's very young. But running backs look great. Cam Skaduzbo and Raleek Brown could be very good. Raleek Brown is the one from USA, I believe, transferred over. They could have some promising wide receivers. And the defensive line was top 40 in run defense last year. They do have to replace a couple guys, brought some transfers in, but they could be top 40. A little better again in run defense. So they could have some things happening for them. Schedule's a little tricky again, not a lot of gimmies in there. But, they could be 3-9 again, but be a better team. Still need a quarterback in there. But again, these are channel flippers. You mean we'll flip to them one game and not go back to them for a month and just check on things here and there. So again, Auburn, Arizona, Georgia Tech, Michigan State, Liberty, South Florida, Nebraska, Memphis, UCF, Stanford. Maybe keep an eye on UTSA, Arizona State. See if those 2 teams can string anything together as well. Now, lastly, before I touch on a few games here, roll call, big name quarterbacks, small school transfers, big impact. Couldn't quite come up with a name for this section. But anyways, I just want to name off a couple of quarterbacks that transferred from bigger programs to smaller schools, because sometimes you turn on a North Texas game or a Georgia Southern game, and you say, oh, the quarterback they have here kind of looks like he's performing at a higher level than some of these other players, where you see a team slowly start to make its way up conference standings that you might not necessarily have expected. And you realize, oh, they have a quarterback that transferred in from Alabama. Well, geez, no wonder. It sure seems like that'd be a higher caliber player. Well, let's take note of inventory of some of those players here. So Ty Thompson transferred from Oregon to Tulane, a quarterback vacancy there after Michael Pratt vacated after 3+ years as a starter there. He only got a few snaps, well, more than a few snaps, a little bit in there as a Oregon backup, but he will transfer from there to Tulane. They have an opportunity to start there for those folks. Could be very interesting. Now, Chandler Morris has been kicked around a while. He played for Michigan, played for TCU. He was literally banged up. He's going to North Texas, giving that group the Mean Green, who's been a very competitive team there, an interesting quarterback there. Max Brown did not play much at Florida. He's going to Charlotte, though. You want to talk about teams that aren't very newsworthy. Charlotte is one of them. So just keep an eye on that if you see any Charlotte highlights pop up or them in a close game there. Jake Garcia and Caitlin Hauser of Missouri and Michigan State, respectively, transferred to East Carolina, giving the Pirates a couple of former Power 5 options. Caitlin Hauser, of course, got some time last year with Michigan State with all the hubbub going on with the roster and different guys switching around due to the very serious coaching stuff that was going on. And Jake Garcia from Missouri moving over there as well. Ben Finley, NC State, played there a bit, hung out at Cal last season. He's moving to Akron. Not much expected from the Zips this season, but they will have an opportunity to field a quarterback who's been at a couple of much higher level schools. Malachi Nelson, this was big news, of course, from USC transferring over to Boise State. Of course, USC going straight from Caleb Williams to their current quarterback, Miller Moss, who looks very interesting. So that didn't leave a whole lot of room at the moment for 5-star, I think, Malachi Nelson. Now he's promptly lost the starting position at Boise State, but we could very much still see him in the mix here for the Broncos. Just keep that in the back of your little head. Dylan Morris from Washington, part of a mass exodus. All kinds of stuff, of course, going on in Washington. He's moving over to James Madison, a good recruit there. Dexter Williams II from Indiana, moving over to Georgia Southern, a good program there in Georgia Southern. Tate Rodemaker from Florida State, of course, played a little bit when Jordan went down last year. He moved over to Southern Mississippi. So a little experience at the Power 5 level. Moving over to the Golden Eagles. Noah Kim from Michigan State flipped over to Coastal Carolina, taking over for the multi-year starter, Grayson McCall, who actually moved up from Coastal Carolina to NC State. So we will see Noah Kim with an opportunity here after several starts last season at Coastal Carolina. Could blossom there, we will see. Zach Gibson from Georgia Tech will be moving over to Georgia State. Another interesting little shake and bake there. And General Booty. Did he have a sauce or something come out? No, booty sauce would not be right. He had something come out. The Oklahoma, wrong shade of red there. Oklahoma reserve moving over to Louisiana Monroe, and he's officially been named the starter there with the Warhawks. Interesting to wear shade of brown uniform there. Brown and mustard yellow. Your name is Booty. Interesting. Anyways, those are some of the quarterbacks there moving from higher level programs to smaller level schools. Just keep that in the back of your mind. Your TV guide for week 1 of the college football season. We're going to tackle Thursday and Friday this week so far, and then we will tackle in a couple days here the remainder of the weekend. Of course, we start on Thursday, August 29th, when the weekend will start for some folks. 6 o'clock, the Big Ten Network owns the first game on the slate as the mighty Rutgers Scarlet Knights handle the Howard Buffaloes here. It'll be a mighty 88 degrees, and tickets can be bought for pocket change. But The Rutgers Scarlet Knights, an easier schedule this season, all things considered. They'll have an opportunity to make a bowl game. Howard, Akron to start the season, followed by Virginia Tech, Washington, Nebraska, Wisconsin, UCLA, USC, Minnesota, Maryland, Illinois, Michigan State. Who do they not play? How about Michigan? How about Iowa? How about Penn State? How about Ohio State? It all sounds good to me if you're trying to make a bowl game at the very least with the Rutgers Scarlet Knights here. They did transfer in the quarterback from Minnesota there, the Greek arm. They didn't call him the Greek freak, but the gentleman with the long syllabled name from Minnesota last season. Big arm, not particularly accurate, but someone with some experience there in the Big Ten, and they'll have an opportunity with an easier schedule, well-coached Greg Schiano team to certainly make a bowl game. Got to look good against Howard and Akron here to start the season. 7 o'clock brings us a slew of games. NC State, currently ranked 24th, will be heavy favorites over Western Carolina on the ACC network. First look of Grayson McCall there in red and black. Also at 7 o'clock, Wake Forest will be taking on North Carolina A&T on ESPN+. Also scored away on that pesky network will be UCF and New Hampshire. So KJ Jefferson again there, checking in for the Golden Knights. And Louisiana Monroe as we get Booty Boy in there against Jackson State. Buffalo will be playing Lafayette on ESPN Plus at 7 o'clock as well. Bowling Green and Fordham, I know you're all rooting hard for that one. And Central Michigan and Central Connecticut as well. So the notable games there, Central Florida and New Hampshire, first look on ESPN Plus at 7. Wake Forest as well on ESPN Plus at 7 against North Carolina A&T. Again, nothing super exciting there. If you want to get a look at General Booty, or at least check box scores afterwards, see what happened there, he'll be playing as well. We also have on ESPNU, they'll be playing Arkansas and Arkansas Pine Bluff there. Not a whole lot expected from the Horned Pigs this season. Whole coaching staff is on watch. It actually is going to get quite brutal next week when they go to play Oklahoma State. And then they start off, the first half of the first 6 games, first half of the season, Oklahoma State, Auburn, Texas A&M, Tennessee. This team's going to get blasted. So they need to get things out and going quick against an in-state rival here. So that is offset a little bit. That's at 7:30. Also at 7:30 on ESPN Plus will be Toledo and Duquesne. The Rockets, again, heavy favorites to win in the MAC Conference. Moving to 8 o'clock, ESPN Plus has taken away one of the most exciting to watch teams in the country, and that's the currently number 22 ranked Kansas Jayhawks, as indicated by the fairly expensive ticket prices, as they're hosting Linwood University. But Jalen Daniels is back for the Kansas Jayhawks. Devin Neal, the Lawrence, Kansas native. And this offense is going to be clicking. Again, the secondary should be decent. They're going to beat the life out of Linwood. No line on this one with it being a lower level squad here. But heavy favorites, of course. Kansas, and offense is out clicking. Could a Heisman be hosted in Lawrence this season? SEC Network will have number 11, Missouri, hosting Murray State. Not supposed to be much of a game there either, of course, but Brady Cook will be out there flipping footballs. We have 2 of the best games on the slate on Fox and ESPN. These are the top watches for Thursday. The Minnesota Golden Gophers are underdogs at the moment to the North Carolina Tar Heels on Fox with a 50-point over-under. Seems a little high there. I don't know. 2 teams in interesting spots this season. Not quite sure of the North Carolina Tar Heels. Max Johnson is expected to start. This is his 3rd school. Texas A&M, LSU, former schools of his. He's a big dude, 6'5", but he's been a backup. So not quite sure what's going to happen with him there. Connor Harrell is the other quarterback there with experience. He played for the squad against West Virginia at the end of last season. So Not sure if a recruit might step in there otherwise, but I believe Max Johnson is scheduled to start in there. Could be interesting. I always had high hopes for him. I thought he was interesting. I mean, LSU and Texas A&M. Big body, but some questionable decision-making skills in there sometimes. Minnesota's bringing a quarterback in from New Hampshire, so not quite sure about that. Again, we'd expect North Carolina tend to be a little bit more offensively sound, while Minnesota we expect a little bit more on the defensive side, but it wouldn't be crazy for neither of these teams to make bowl games this year. But that's one of the top watches. However, at 8 o'clock on ESPN, Colorado is playing North Dakota State, and yes, that's the one that's won 2 fists full of championships. Colorado, the line has moved, expected to cover by double digits now. Are they going to, though? They should be better in the trenches. They brought in some highly regarded offensive linemen. Weapons are still prevalent on the offensive side of things, certainly. Travis Hunter should be, how many snaps is he going to play? Shadir Sanders, still expected to be a top quarterback taken in the NFL draft. This will be very exciting. We know North Dakota State still likes to run the ball. We'll try to keep it out of Colorado's hands. We'll try to be very aggressive. Might be a little small, but which problems in the trenches for Colorado anyways? Who knows? This is going to be a very interesting football game. 4th in points last year was North Dakota State, but it's possible they could stay in the trench mix if there's not that big of a step up for Colorado. So we'll see. Favored by 10 points, though, over a low-level team, even though they've won multiple national championships. So not too surprising there. But those are your top 2 games. You also have Jacksonville State hosting Coastal Carolina at 8 o'clock on CBS Sports Network. Jacksonville State, very good team. Could win the Sun Belt this year. And ESPN Plus will squirrel away another few games here. UAB will be hosting Akron State. Tulane will be hosting Southeast Louisiana. And Tulsa will be hosting Northwestern State. Moving to 9 o'clock then, ESPN Plus will be playing number 12 Utah, hosting Southern Utah, as we will get the return of the Cam Rising, a.k.a. the Gardner Minshew Jr. in this game here. So that'll be on. In Big Ten at 9 o'clock, we'll have Illinois hosting Eastern Illinois. First look at the Illini, favored by 4 touchdowns this year. 10 o'clock, True TV will host San Jose State and Sacramento State there in Sacramento, California. So we will get Luke Altmaier back there, the former Ole Miss Rebel, there with Illinois. Those tickets are dirt cheap. San Jose State, new coaching regime there, playing Sacramento State. ESPN Plus taking a bulk of the games, 21 on the slate altogether for Thursday. But again, the keys, 6 o'clock. If you're ready, if you're primed, ready to go, Big Ten Network will have Rutgers and Howard. Moving into the 7 o'clock slot, if you get the ACC Network, you can get your eyes on NC State and Western Carolina. You can move over to Arkansas as well. Get eyes on that on ESPNU. Missouri and Murray State will be playing as a channel flip game at 8 o'clock. But your main two will be Colorado, North Dakota State, and Minnesota and North Carolina as well. Although I would say Jacksonville State, Coastal Carolina, if you're a real big football fan, keep an eye on those two at 8 o'clock as well. Heading into the evening hours, we'll be able to catch the back end of Illinois, Eastern Illinois, as the 8 o'clocks are winding down as well. And then True TV, if you're up that late. All these start times in Eastern time, of course, as I am stating them. If you have access to ESPN Plus, of course, you'll be able to flip over and get eyes on a few other teams, most notably, I think, Kansas. You'll also be able to get eyes on Central Florida. And what were the other ones here? Wake Forest. You'll also be able to get eyes on Utah. That was it. So not super exciting. Well, I call it exciting. I think it's pretty exciting, right? Colorado? Who doesn't want to see Colorado go again against a top-level North Dakota State team? We'll see how things go. And then Friday is always a little bit lighter. We do have 6 games on the slate for Friday, August 30th. Our 6 o'clock game is Army and Lehigh on the CBS Sports Network, so that's accessible To folks, at 7 o'clock, we will have number 16 Oklahoma hosting Temple. Not a lot expected from Temple this year, but that game will be on ESPN. Big Ten Network will host Michigan State and Florida Atlantic as they continue their home-and-home series there. Only favored by 14 points are the Spartans. That line has moved, but you'll get a look at a couple new quarterbacks there, in at least, a new starting quarterback for Oklahoma and a new starting quarterback over on this side of the country for Michigan State. 7:30 ACC Network will have Duke and Elon as they start a new regime there for the Duke Blue Devils. 9 o'clock we'll have Wisconsin, heavily favored over the Western Michigan Broncos. Luke Fickell trying to get things constantly moving there with Whiskey and Whiskey Nation. And 10:30, here we go. Stanford and TCU on ESPN is the late night of the doubleheader. 9.5 point favorites currently is TCU. I believe that's changed as I've looked at it here. But Stanford again, Ashton Daniels at quarterback, a little sneaky, hosting TCU here in the opener. Just keep an eye. TCU might not be very good this year. Again, Chandler Morris transferred out, but they've had a bunch. They changed quarterbacks newer last year. They got a whole bunch of stuff going on. So I would say the top watches here for Friday would be to get eyes on Michigan State and flip over to Oklahoma when you have a chance at 7 o'clock. Flip over to Wisconsin at 9, and then I'm excited for the 10:30 Stanford TCU. Heading to a long weekend. At least watch the first half of that one. Maybe record the back half, and catch eyes on that early in the morning as I'm doing breakfast, just to see if I'm not box score watching first thing in the morning on Saturday morning. So thank you very much for tuning in. We'll run through Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 5 straight days of college football over your weekend, and some of the top watches here. Again, a recap in a couple days here. So thank you very much for tuning in, tackling yet another list of teams. Couple notes on week 1, your watches for Thursday, Friday, and notes on a couple of the big movies that have come out in the past couple weeks. Thank you for supporting the Michael Welch podcast. Bye-bye.
All my blessings, 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 all my blessings.
Okay, here's the spoiler section of the Deadpool review, because you really have to talk about what happened in the movie to get to some of the core ideals and thoughts that I have here, and that's kind of important. So, first of all, Cassandra Nova, interesting villain to choose for the film, but it does bring the X-Men element in, I suppose, and just weird to have her in this particular area in the garbage zone or lost zone or whatever it's called again, that the time police dump stuff in. Nevertheless, brings us to the X-Men area, but overall, that plot, and this is why Marvel movies are always dragged down, of Mobius just being able to go off onto his own and put together a time machine to destroy all universes and take control. This is a time organization that has all these characters working for it that we know of, and yet he can go off on his own power mysteriously and create this device to rule all times and all universes and whatever. And it flies under the radar. Very strange plot point. That doesn't necessarily have to be the case. It makes it seem like any of those beings could do it. And then oddly enough, he knows Cassandra Nova can get out to that area at any time, or anyone else of decent power, and take control of it, which she then does. And then it's also super easy to defeat this thing. Oh yeah, just go down there, connect the negative or connect the matter and antimatter energies and cancel it out, and it'll blow up. So just what the hell is this plot? What is this? Yes, it's a devastating device that just this Joe Schmo can put together, seemingly without much other energy or thought, and a few rogue agents with him, as we see the guy that's lusting over Deadpool and some of the folks working with him there. And then it's also the easiest thing in the world to defeat. seemingly, if you give your life, which it didn't kill Deadpool or Wolverine. And then it also creates an easy pathway to destroy such a dominant mutant in Cassandra Nova, just an easy out to destroy the main villain as well. So just frustrating to see those plot holes. Could be a 5-star movie if we wrote a decent plot in there, right? But that's one of the problems. Like, what the hell are we doing with this material? You know, we couldn't have Cassandra Nova shut down with a surprise, Professor X show up, or maybe we are able to finally put her away for good, and maybe you don't necessarily defeat her, but you're able to seal her away somewhere because she is very powerful. I don't know that Wolverine and Deadpool would have any way to defeat her, but you chose her to be the villain in this film, and she's way overpowered for what the heroes you put together here, and just sloppy. I think it's just sloppy. But Matthew McFadden did a good job there. Enjoyed him. Blake Lively's Lady Deadpool was fun. I didn't realize that both of their children were actually Deadpools as well, Kidpool and Babypool. Enjoyed the Vanessa role by Morena Baccarin, I believe it's pronounced. Blind Al had all the characters in there. And, of course, the heart, the nice heart piece you have to have and everything, the touching piece. How he wants to be meaningful, enjoying the Avengers and all this and that. And he's gone through various stages of being a hero and not being a hero at various times in the books. Not that the movies necessarily have to reflect that, but obviously Ryan Reynolds knows the material and loves this character, and that's why he's really pushed for the Deadpool that we see on screen. And I don't know, but some of the plots are just so crappy. But we did get to see Channing Tatum as Gambit. That was fantastic. He pushed for a Gambit movie for so long. Of course, we saw Gambit in one of the X movies. He was portrayed by, I think it's Taylor something or other, the kid that was in the Friday Night Lights television show that I really enjoyed, and a couple other things. Never quite made it to an A-list actor, I wouldn't say, but definitely known by his face. You'd know if you saw him. Kind of forgotten role as Gambit, though, in one of the movies. But to see Channing Tatum finally get his role here was pretty cool. And to have him openly make jokes like he didn't exist at all, or no one knows where he belongs or anything like that, was absolutely hilarious. Great to see Elektra, Blade, and to kind of explain the movies and the universes per se that we knew from those movies as being destroyed was kind of cool. But again, it's like, well, we enjoy those movies. Are you going to pull them into the Marvel Universe? Are we just restarting off all the films we've seen over the past 20 years? Or, what are we doing with this material? Is everything a different universe? So that was good to pull them in here. I think that's one of the smartest things that they've done, is be able to say they're all different universes. But it makes them meaningful. But it is kind of weird to be like, well, this whole Blade world and universe that you're seeing him save for 3 movies is actually just going to be wiped out. So it's not going to matter soon anyways. Strange to think in terms of the story and its progression. Nevertheless, good to have them actually say that it's like a part of the overall picture and universe, I think. Just a strange way to have to wrap it up, I suppose. But I guess I'm not really sure what would be a better way to do it. I guess we did have a Shatterstar in here, which is kind of cool. We did have a Lady Deathstrike, Kelly Hu appearance as well. Just looking at some of the cast that was in there. So love the appearances. Great to have Ant-Man as well. A dead Ant-Man is the villain hideout. So enjoyed a lot of those pieces and the action and a lot of the jokes. Again, the soundtrack. The van battle scene was great as well. To take time to have Wolverine and Deadpool battle 2 separate times as this and have neither one come out the winner was pretty fantastic. And then the end credits to give Hugh Jackman kind of a sign off and a go away was pretty great. So again, sloppy, real plot and resolution. Oh, you have 72 hours, or my machine's gonna, take all the timelines, and then it's you can't beat it unless you just, align the antimatter and matter lines together, then I lose. Just really garbage. But these movies kind of suffer from the fact that they are fantasy. I mean, comic books, fantasy, of course, and that they can write and work however they want to work. So maybe it is that simple, right? Maybe it is that simple to build a new device in this world to, do this kind of damage to the timelines in this out of timeline time traffic cop kind of world, right? That kind of needs to be portrayed more, I think. It's just how fragile the lines really are, because with the police and all this, it kind of seems like it's maybe not fragile. That's why they go after one individual doing a couple things on the side to make sure the timeline goes exactly as it's supposed to be, throughout the Loki series and all these various movies. And I don't know. Some things matter, some things don't. Some things are simple, but are they really? Just a changing of stakes. And I don't know. The comic books are like this sometimes too, obviously. But when you see them on screen, sometimes they really fall flat. But again, overall, good movie. Love the cameos. Still not enough like X-Men stuff in it, really. No X-Men. And then there was no like future, like, hey, this is what we're going to do with guys moving forward. And, we saw Hugh Jackman off, and that was one of the biggest problems, actually, is that he's down on himself this whole movie. He's upset that he let the X-Men die. And it's actually really sad that they drug us through like an hour of this film. Like, what did you do, Wolverine? It was so terrible. Oh, I let the X-Men die. Well, we could have guessed that. We could have made it a more, ugly plot. Well, of course they died. Well, we could have grabbed that inference from, how sad you are. No kidding. And then by the end of the film, it's like, well, their deaths made you who you are. Well, it has not been the point of the entire movie. We want them back because their lives, any one individual, but collectively especially, are more important than your own. And he's just like, no, you're right, and my world's gone. So we'll just get a bite to eat, and then I'll figure out what to do with the rest of my life. Ridiculous. So the past is gone now, and we have no idea what we're doing moving forward. So that being said, still a 4-star movie, because that's what we expect from these Marvel flicks.